in 2010, and we've done a number of different things over the years. And certainly when COVID came along, like other organizations, we pivoted to virtual programming since May, actually, of this year. There is a planning committee and a group of people behind this wonderful event, and I wanted to thank them, especially the planning committee and Ottawa Senior Pride Network, for sponsoring this. So tonight we have a very special event, and we recognize that, first of all, it's been a year since COVID first was diagnosed in Canada, January 25th, 2020. Sometimes it seems like last month, and sometimes it seems like we've always been in the pandemic, but we know that it's been hard to get through. So many things are happening now with the vaccine. The variant is on the horizon. We don't know which horizon. We want it to arrive as soon as we can so we can get back to things somewhat the way they were. But just realizing that the winter is long, it's hard, and we need inspiration, we need ideas, we need to be talking to each other and connect as a community. So that's what tonight's about. We have some special guests, and these special guests are people who have been behind the scenes in our community for many years, supporting individuals, families, and communities. And so they have lots of wisdom and ideas, and they're used to talking to people about this. So the format is a little different tonight than normal. Normally in our discussion groups, everybody's on the screen together, but tonight we're asking people to stop their video and their microphone so that it gives more bandwidth and actually lets more people on. But it also, on your screen, you'll be seeing the panelists and myself. Behind the scenes, we have Glenn Crawford, who is our master of making sure things happen, and we certainly couldn't do it without him. So round of applause for Glenn, as always. Thank you. It's wonderful. So tonight, we're really going to have a good start. Laurie Carson is going to help us to sort of get settled and get centered before we start. What's going to happen is I'll ask, we've done some questions beforehand, before tonight. I'm going to ask our panelists to respond to those questions. And then when they're finished, we'll turn it over to Glenn, and he'll see if there are people who are in the audience that have a comment or question that they would like clarification or more information. So you can participate that way. So because it's Zoom, we had to choose a format where we could hear people discuss these things, but it's really quite challenging to have people talk at the same time. So this is the way we're doing it tonight, and we hope as many people can enjoy this as possible. We are going to record this, and I want to remind people that you can change your names as well by hovering over your name with your cursor and go to More, which is beside your name, and then press on that, and you'll be able to rename yourself however you want to. So I invite people to do that, to stop their mics and their video. And I see that everybody has done that. So thank you very much. So we're going to get started now, and I'll hand it over to Laurie Carson to help us get into the evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Holly. Gosh, I started feeling like I'd like to rename myself something really creative as you said that, but I think I'll stick with Laurie for tonight. We launch into the content of things before we've arrived. So what I wanted to do is just take a moment to bring ourselves into the room, in a sense, the virtual room that we're in, so that we're together. Before I even do that, I just want to acknowledge that what a challenging time this is, and the losses that we've been experiencing. There may be people on the call who have experienced friends or family or people close to them who have actually lost loved ones. And at the very least, we've lost connection. So for me, the starting point is connecting with ourselves, and then connecting with others, and then the broader community. So let's take a moment. to come in and connect with ourselves, and then we'll relate with who's in the room. The shutdown creates a lack of movement for everybody. We just don't even need to go anywhere like we used to. So for starters, feel into your body. Just kind of settle in. Notice if you're sitting in a way that really supports you. Is there any way that you're leaning or leaning in that isn't supportive? And just get to know it, first of all. Connect with your body. If it feels right, then take a few fuller breaths. And as you breathe out, see if you can let your weight just settle into the chair or sofa or whatever the surface is underneath you. Another fuller breath. And letting go as you breathe out. And then check in, how am I feeling right now? How am I feeling coming together? And notice if your mind wants to move on or go to other things, and see if you can just bring it back into the moment. Being curious, and even take your focus off the screen. Bring your focus inward for a moment. Where is there a place in your body that feels good? What feels at ease? And where is there a place in your body that might feel a little more tense? And then dare to just raise your shoulders up as you breathe in and let them drop. Soften around the face. I find that Zoom makes us pretty self-conscious. Do that again. Up. When else do we stare at ourselves as we're looking at other people? It's not natural. One more time, raising your shoulders. Breathing out, just let it all go. And in those few moments, just notice if you feel any different. And now we're going to start with a question. I don't have the question in front of me. Andrea is going to start with answering the first question about how we are each managing. So over to you, Andrea.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
So do you want me to put the question out for everybody as a reminder?
I think I can bring it. Oops. Yeah. Okay. My name is Andrea Madan, and I have been meeting with people and talking with them for over 30 years about all kinds of things that can happen in life and that are sometimes complicated and sometimes can be resolved, and other times it's not so easy, but it's a process. And I think this is kind of what we are in now. We are in something that is long enough to definitely be called a process. And so I will answer the first question that was posed to us to speak to. What do I do personally in order to make it through this time? Obviously, we all know that many things were being taken away from us, and we were left with very little to do. So since that brings about sort of an emptiness, but also a sense of loss of control, I help myself by trying to bring about some things that give me perhaps the illusion, but also the actual experience of having something to do. And it could be anything as not very exciting and a little bit boring. There's some task that needs to happen that I'm not very keen on, but that I'm always very happy to have done in the end. Or it could be something that gives me meaning, or something that gives me satisfaction. So there are two things in particular that are the case for me. One is to do some writing. I recently have started doing some writing, which is very interesting and brings about memories and emotions and interesting intellectual challenge. But also I love to play, and I think we need something, I certainly need something that gives me some happiness and a bit of joy. And so I've started to play with a lot of puppets that I have collected over the years, and I've started to do some things with that, which has been very lovely and making me smile and making me happy. And these are things that we all need, and I certainly need that as well. And then in terms of other things, being connected to the outside world best I can, I make a point of course, being in contact with people that I would always be in contact with, but also with some people that I may not always call or be in touch so much. So reaching out to people that I know I have been part of my life and that I could refresh a little bit to be more part of my life. And they appreciate it and I did. I appreciate it. And then, of course, once in a while, very important, is to go outside, because being at home so much, not having anywhere to go, um, as Laurie said before, is sort of makes it not exactly like prison, but certainly too much of the same thing. So even just to go out for a little while for a walk or something can make me feel refreshed and a little bit away from always the same environment. So that's kind of more or less what I do. The only last thing I want to say, which helps me a lot, is to remind myself to have a sense of perspective. So by that I mean, well, perhaps whatever's happening now hasn't happened before, but somewhat similar things have happened, difficult times, for example. And so not to get all down and too long. It's okay to get down somewhat, but not too long. And just to sort of keep in mind that this hopefully won't last forever, and that there are some things that are okay in my life, and to help me to be hopeful a little bit, or at least positive. So that's, I think, in brief, what I do to make it through this time. And now I'm going to turn it over. I think it was Ben, wasn't it? Because we're going by the alphabet, I understand.
That's right. We'll try.
That works. Thanks, Andrea. And thanks, Laurie, for the grounding exercise. I found that quite helpful. My name is Ben Murray. I use he, him pronouns. I've been involved in the community for many years, starting with work I did with the AIDS Committee of Ottawa in the 1980s. And I've been involved in the community a fair bit since then. More recently with OSPN on the training committee. I don't know I don't know that I can add a whole lot to what Andrea said. I think you've covered a lot of the points that I wanted to. I guess I would add, my favorite mantra is everything's temporary. So when things aren't so good, like for some people with COVID, believing that everything's temporary helps give me hope. And when things are going well, I focus on gratitude. And we know that through studies, hope and gratitude both contribute a lot to mental health, good mental health and well-being. Like Andrea, exercise, spending time outdoors. One of the things I guess people may have heard of lately is if you don't have a pet or somebody that you live with, get a plant. Apparently getting a plant and taking care of a plant can help make people feel invigorated and feel connected in ways that maybe they weren't feeling before. So that's all I have to add for now. I'll pass it over to
Chris Peacock. Chris.
Chris.
Hi there. Yeah, so I'm Chris Peacock, and been, I guess, my longest standing involvement with the community is as the music director for In Harmony Choir, which I've been doing for a very, very long time. This is 2021 is actually the 30th anniversary of for In Harmony. The would have been next month, so we'll have to wait to celebrate that till next year. But have been involved with In Harmony for at least 25 of those 30 years, which is has been wonderful. And in my work life, I own a business and to be in flow neurofeedback services, and it is really about calming the central nervous system so that people can focus, sleep, emotionally regulate more easily, and just live with more flow in their lives. So um, so I and in terms of the questions, I love the plant idea. I think that's great. What's kept me going for the last many months definitely has been walking. I have a routine with a friend Monday to Friday, 6:45 in the morning out there, and it's just I notice it when I if I have to miss a day. Really, that helps to ground me in the morning. And what I've noticed is that I've had to call on a lot more tools during the pandemic to stay steady. I mean, I'm very fortunate as a neurofeedback practitioner that I have my own system, so I can do that. But it's taken definitely more than that. So whether it's the walking, using my mindfulness practice a lot more often, um, doing breathing exercises. For me, gratitude is a big one as well. Learning how to play games on Zoom with friends, that which has been a whole other challenge, but it, that's half the fun. We're trying to figure out how to do it and how to have the phone and all of that. And although it's been a lot of extra work, continuing to have the choir going in Zoom format where really I'm the only one singing and I'm watching everybody else on mute and assuming that they're singing something. But it's been just that sense of community coming together once a week, and sometimes it's somebody's having a tough time, and so having that opportunity to support people in that environment, and but also to do some kind of singing. And I've also found it very helpful. It's I've been doing it for my work stuff, but I think just the walking is also about accountability too. I've I've found it much more harder to get motivated in terms of my work sometimes, and so I have an accountability partner now, and we meet once a week, and I'm also part of another accountability group. And sometimes it's just that we get on Zoom and say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to work on. And just saying that to someone else, and then going off and doing it, and then coming back, and that's been very helpful just in terms of my work. So I will now. I have no idea who I'm passing it to.
You can pass it to Lori.
Oh, well, I can. Yeah. So full disclosure, Lori is my wife too. So I will happily pass it on to Lori.
Thank you.
Why, thank you, Chris. Yes, I'm back. I have been doing body-centered psychotherapy for over 30 years in Ottawa, which is a bit shocking also. And I think that work is about, it's why I wanted to start there tonight. It's about connecting with ourselves and the world, and ourselves include our bodies. So that's been my work. I think I do it because I need it myself. I use she, her pronouns. I like Chris, one of my main ways of staying sane is walking, getting outside. Actually, I really need to get out every day. I feel better if I get out every day, and when I don't, I really notice it. So that's been really helpful. And lately, I'm pretty excited that the canal's opening. I've been cross-country skiing just down on the S-Jam. And so those things, I really notice I feel happier when I'm doing them. I'm also really aware, one of the practices that I would say I have in general is gratitude. But it's been, I feel so privileged during COVID. That word is being thrown around, but I feel so fortunate. And I'm made very, very aware of that, about where I live and, my physical home, my relationship, my friendships. And so I'm really noticing that all the little things I feel grateful for. I'm really, COVID has really helped me to be appreciative. And when I feel off or things feel harder, that gratitude does help to ground me and remind me, God, that if others can do it, I can certainly do it. So that's been a big piece. I think one of the things that I've been doing more during COVID and kind of inspired by COVID is to try and think creatively and be creative. And I have actually gone deeper into some art that I've kind of wanted to do but not gotten to, and that feels good and necessary with COVID. And I'm kind of challenging myself, I think, to be a little more creative in my thinking. So Ben, you mentioned having a plant, and what I did recently was took a really small dish and planted grass seed in it that we have from the yard. And it's just so fun to see it like just dirt and then these little bits, and then they're like this high now. It's really great. And it just reminds me that we need that aliveness, and we need to be up close to it. And so simple things like that. So that is a little creative thing. And so I'm trying to kind of think more creatively. So as Chris said, playing games is sometimes unsuccessful, but fun anyways. And lastly, one of the things that I think is particular to COVID is connecting with people, as maybe was it you, Andrea, saying that people I haven't been in touch with as much, but even that I'm trying to do it a little differently. So one friend that I had kind of been out of touch with or hadn't had such regular contact with, we started texting regularly and just sending a photo of our day. And just to, it when she did it, and I could tell when I did it, it brought us into she lives in Toronto, and it brought us into each other's worlds a little bit more. And so it I didn't feel like Zooming with her all the time or video chatting. But this made it like we were sharing our worlds a little bit more than just a text. So that was, and it was fun to make an effort in a way that I haven't always to be more connected. Yeah.
Great.
So over to, I have no idea.
Sean.
Thank you. My name is Sean Hale. I'm actually fairly new to Ottawa. I've been here for about a year. I got introduced to this group through George, who I met along the way. And we have a friend that retired recently, I guess last year, and moved in with us. So he's 73. So when you talk about being lucky, when we look at our family, I have 2 kids that are 2 and 3 with my husband. And then we have Paul who lives with us. So between the group of us, we have quite a busy household. So we're lucky in kind of that fortunate way of having that business at home. I do psychotherapy out of now virtually. So I do it kind of across Ontario now. And then I do workshops for organization, which have now moved virtually as well. So that's kind of been keeping me busy. When you talked about a sense of purpose, Andrea, that's kind of something that keeps me going. In terms of coping, in terms of having something to focus on, being in psychotherapy and kind of caring for other people takes the focus off of yourself a little bit. So it gives you something to focus on, right? And same thing with the kids. When they come home, it's about them, right? So there's not a lot of time to kind of think about what do I need, what do I have to get done to kind of make myself happy. But when those times do come, because they are important, we do a lot of board games. Now that we have 3 adults in the home, we're like, hey, we can do board games with 3 people. So we've been doing that almost every night for the last month because it was just getting too long, right? And TV became too easy to sit back and watch. So we've been trying to do a lot of those things to keep us engaged, keep us moving. I agree with the kind of physical aspect. So getting outside, going for walks. We found even when it's too cold because of the young kids, even when it's too cold, just going for a drive, like going to Tim Hortons, getting a coffee, even though I can make a coffee, just that drive of getting out and going somewhere and coming back. We can't go inside, we can't kind of socialize, but it's just getting out. And oftentimes what we'll do with the kids is we'll pick up a coffee and then drive around a neighborhood that we haven't driven around before. And we just kind of look at the houses. Around Christmas time, it was great because we looked at all the decorations, but it just gives you a half an hour outside, right? Without the cold kind of beating down on you. So that's something that we've started doing as well. I can encourage some of my clients to connect with some of the hobbies that they've left behind. Oftentimes we think we never have time for anything, and now we've been given this time, almost too much of it. So I kind of encourage my clients to connect back, and I know you mentioned about the painting and getting back into art, and I have a few clients who have done that. I had one client, and I don't know if this would resonate with anybody on the call, but saying that I love to paint. I used to love to paint, but picking up a blank canvas right now seems overwhelming to me. So what we did is we found some of those paint by numbers on Amazon or whatever it was, and they started off there. So they were like, I don't have to think about what I'm going to paint. I just can get going. And then when she became in a state of flow after a few of those canvases, she was like, I actually want to paint, a scenery. And then she did it kind of from scratch. But it's almost like a stepping stone into those hobbies. So if there's a template or if there's something that can help you get there, that can sometimes be helpful. I think that acknowledgement that this is temporary is really important. And I always try and add for now, right? I feel bad for now. I feel isolated for now. So it's not that I'm lonely, I'm isolated, and this is going to last forever. I think it's important to contextualize it into a time frame. And there is progress. We have a vaccine. It's going to take a while, right? Which extends. It feels like it's always being extended. Yeah. But we still have to acknowledge that progress, right? We're getting there, right? It's just going to take time. And I think those things are important. I think also exercise is another thing that I've been trying to keep up with. So I was one of the many that flocked online to buy workout equipment at exorbitant prices because they were in demand. And even with that, the motivation, right? So now I have it, I can see it. Do I want to pick it up? Probably not. So what I've been doing is I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So I will save or reserve audiobooks for when I work out. So that way, if I want to continue it, I have to be doing exercise or going for a walk, whatever it is, so I can listen to it. Or a certain show. So if it's in front of the TV, I'm only going to watch this series when I work out. So if I want to continue that series, I can't just binge it in a day. I have to kind of disciplined enough to go and do it there. So kind of using those external motivators to keep you moving sometimes can be helpful. And so those are the things I've been focusing on. I think the Zoom and those connections are fantastic. My family is all in the Caribbean, so we haven't been able to see them for the last year and a half. And so because of the grandkids, they're feeling it. And so we do, similar to what Laurie was saying, we send a lot of pictures because we can't always video chat. We can't always schedule a Zoom. So we send constant pictures throughout the day. This is what they're doing now. And it's quick little messages, but it keeps us up to date, right? And then we do schedule Zoom calls at dinner time sometimes. And then we kind of have the big conversations, right? But it's, I think those connections are important to keep as in whatever form that might be. And reconnecting with people because everybody's feeling it, right? So if there's people that you haven't connected with in a while and it might be a little bit strange to reconnect, they're probably going through the same thing, right? So reaching out to those people that you want to reconnect with, sharing kind of in this experience what they're going through, and then kind of rekindling some of those relationships in this time might be useful. But that's kind of what our family has been doing. But I know wintertime during COVID is not a fun time to be in. But I think similar to what somebody else was saying as well, the fact that we have the technology to do this, the fact that we're in this time where I can click on Netflix and I have a library to choose from, or I can download books without leaving my desk. I can order board games that show up at my door within 2 days, and then I can play them. We're in a very lucky time to be isolated, right? We have a lot of things that we can still access. I think that the gratitude for that is something to keep in mind. It's just how we utilize it.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Sean. So I just wanted to remind folks that if you have comments or questions, you can write them in the chat bar. It's at the bottom of your screen, right in the middle, and it says chat. And so you're welcome to do that if you have any questions or any follow-up right now. I will say for me that this is the only question that I'll be part of, but doing some things on Zoom that I've been doing and hosting little meetings with my family, with friends. I've reached out to friends that I haven't seen for decades, and we've now set up regular times to talk to each other. And it's just like, I grew up on the prairies in Brandon, Manitoba. So I'm seeing people all across the country and in the US, and certainly the people that I'm seeing on our chat groups have done the same thing, reached out to their families, they're having more conversations with their families than they might have had prior to this. So there are some things that are, that as we learn to use the new tools that are really, really helping. But for me, this has been it. And so I'm really happy to be here tonight to be part of this. So just a reminder though, people can ask questions in the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. So let's move on to the next question. And several of you have mentioned this already, many folks in our community, and I'm just going to move over here and read some things so that I don't forget what we've come up with. Many folks in our community recognize that we do have lots of privilege. A backyard is one example. Yet many of us are still really experiencing difficult emotional days during COVID. So what can we do together to reinforce that it's okay for each person not to feel okay all the time? I think a number of you mentioned that. If you wanted to add to things that you've already said, that would be great. So feeling okay about not being okay. So Andrea, we'll start again with you.
Okay, I think what's important is to give yourself permission that it's okay not to be okay all the time, and not to be hard on yourself for having a bad day, on the one hand. So, but then at the same time, not to get so carried away that bad day and that not feeling okay one day in a big way is going to go on and on endlessly. So perhaps to devise a little bit of a message in one's mind about sort of this double message that I mentioned. So on one hand, to say, okay, to have a bad day, it sucks, it really is bad, I hate this COVID, and I wish it would finish, and all those kind of things that are totally relevant and appropriate. And at the same time, also to say, okay, I have been through other times that have been hard, or yesterday was not such a bad day, and it may be that this is going to be a particular bad one, but tomorrow might be better. So a mix of validating yourself and giving yourself permission, but also creating a little bit of a hopeful kind of view on that it's not going to be there all the time that intensely. So that's what I would suggest would be a good thing to do. And anybody else?
So we could go to Ben next.
Okay.
I guess I would start off saying that when somebody's always okay, that raises some flags for me. So it's a good thing to not always be okay. So it's a matter of perspective. We often put a lot of expectations on ourselves uh, to be perfect, to be great all the time and have a great weekend and to be busy, and we put a lot of value on things that often are unhealthy. So I think it's important to take stock, check in. One of the reasons I liked Lori's exercise before we started, the grounding exercise, is it's important for people to check in on themselves. How am I feeling today? And not just sort of rush through that, oh, I'm fine, but take a look and sort of peek under some of the corners and see, how am I really doing today? And 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 be with that. And if I need help, ask for help. And it's another thing that we often have a hard time doing. It's great to ask for help, and there's so many people who want to help. And especially in times like this, people want to help even more. And it's good for, it's a healthy experience for the person being helped and for the person who's helping. So it's contagious. So that's my 2 cents worth.
That's great. Totally agree with you on that. People really do want to help each other and are. So Chris, you're next.
Yeah, well, similar things that it's so important to acknowledge when we're just having a bad day, and whether it's COVID or any other time, where those days are always going to happen, and a little more during COVID. And I just know for me that when there are days when I just go, okay, no, I just need to stop and have a day, and that's okay. And I found that a nice long bath on those days really helps bring me back to myself, and then move through it. And I particularly in groups, I'm a part of a number of networking groups, and how important it is within a group to acknowledge that um, we all have bad days. And Lori had shared not too long ago an analogy to a bucket, which I've been using a lot since then. Is that with COVID, our bucket is already half full, just because COVID in itself is stressful. So we're already starting at that baseline. So it's not surprising that we get to the top of our bucket faster, and then we need to do that check-in process and use our tools even more to help us through it, and recognizing that these times are going to pass.
Right.
Okay.
Over to Laurie.
What occurs to me that's not I agree with everything that's been said. One thing is to not be afraid to really ask how someone's doing. I think as Ben was saying, you know, there's a tendency to say things are okay, and I think we can either share or model what's really going on for us, but also ask in a way that we're genuinely interested in what's going on, not being afraid to really ask or to really find out. And along with that, I think as COVID's gone on longer, there's some normalizing about it that's making it kind of go in the background, which is natural. We need to just get on with our lives the best we can. But sometimes we're forgetting the baseline stress that it is. So I think it's important to acknowledge, and or this idea that we have privilege, therefore we're not, you know, we're not suffering with it. So it is as Chris said, that bucket analogy, and it is like a background stressor that's there all the time for everybody. I think that the way it hit me recently is sometimes COVID in and of itself, as we're getting used to it, isn't the stressor, but it's taken away the things we would usually do to help us to de-stress. And so it's like we can't find our resources. So that's why that first question is so important, so that we're figuring out what lets us get resourced again in order to manage the day-to-day, because that's a lot of what's been taken away. The fun, the innovative things, the connecting, that's what we've lost. So
Yeah, great point.
over to, is it
Over to Sean.
Thank you.
Sean.
And I also agree with everything people have been sharing. I think that openness is important. I find it interesting because I have some clients who are like, this is my first time in therapy and I don't want anybody to know, because there's a stigma and a shame around being in therapy, seeking help. And then I have clients who are like, oh, I was telling my sister about what we talked about, right? And they're completely open about the whole process, right? And I think the latter is so much better because it for that individual, for my client, I think it removes that stigma of I'm broken and I'm ashamed of it. And I think for us as people in the community, talking about our own struggles, talking about, you know, this is what I'm going through, this is what I've noticed, this is who I talk to, right? Those kind of things are useful. Like today sucks, you know, this is not something I want to be in. You know what I mean? And I think it's important for other people to hear that, because it normalizes what they might be going through as well, and it encourages them to open up as well. And I think that open discussion can be really helpful. The other thing is what I do with some of my clients, is we talk about what you can control. So I don't feel okay today. Okay, that's fair and that's completely allowed. Is what you're feeling upset about or what you're feeling uncomfortable about, are you able to control the causing factor? What is causing that? Is it that you're unhappy with your job, you're unhappy with your spouse, you're unhappy with COVID in general? If it's something that can be actioned, then put a goal around it, put a plan around it. What are you going to do? So you don't like your job, this is making you miserable. Okay, so what are the next steps? What else would you like to do? Where are your passions? Let's talk about that and go in that direction. If it's about a spouse, you know, I'm having a hard time, how do you talk to that person about it? How do you resolve those issues? How do you resolve that conflict? And so there's action items around it. If it's not in your control, then that's the monster that nobody wants to kind of deal with, right? So if it's not in your control and you're still feeling bad about it, then what can you do to cope? And that's where things like the hot bath, that's where things like distraction, that's where I feel uncomfortable in my body, I feel uncomfortable in my brain. How do I cope with it in the moment, right? And I think the other question is, how long has this lasted, right? So if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling sad today. Have you been feeling sad for 6 months? Have you been feeling sad for 3 days? There's a difference, right? And if it is the answer, I've been feeling sad for 6 months and I don't find joy in anything, then it comes to a big intervention. Then what do we need to do then? So if there's something that has been keeping you down for 6 months, then do you need to talk to somebody? Do you need to find an outlet, even if it's a venting buddy, right? Someone you can call and be like, this sucks, I hate it, how do I had a horrible day, I'm just feeling down. And you can kind of go back and forth without any judgment. Having that safe space to do that can be cathartic as well, right? So trying to figure out, answering those questions, trying to figure out what's my next steps. And sometimes distraction is great, right? There's a lot of things we can do in the moment to just pull our attention away from the rumination, right? Where we're just kind of tossing these ideas back and forth in our head, the kind of negative thoughts, and they don't go away and they kind of spiral down. And if you find yourself spiraling, how do you interrupt that, right? How do you break yourself out of that cycle so it doesn't go too deep? And a lot of times distraction can be a big part of that. And then interventions from other people, right? Getting out, reaching out to people. If it's isolating, reaching out to people for support when you need it. But I think it all goes down to that feeling of stigma, feeling like it's safe to speak out when you're feeling down, saying I am not doing that great, right? And saying those things out loud to those that love you, because they can often talk about their experiences. They can share in that experience. They can be there to listen, right? Sometimes a lot of I have a number of clients who say it's just nice to be able to talk about this stuff because I don't want to talk. I don't want to burden other people with it, right? So I think having those safe people that you don't feel like you're burdening with these issues can be really, really helpful. And so finding that support network can be helpful. And it also communicates to them that it's okay to not be okay.
Great. Thanks very much, Sean. So, Glenn, I wanted to turn it over to you to see if there are things that our audience members have written in the chat that you think we should be addressing.
Sure. I've gotten a couple of comments. One person had mentioned that her girlfriend and I had the pleasure of playing a Frisbee game in the yard of friends we are getting to know. We likely would have not have done that without the pandemic, and it's been wonderful. So that was just a great idea that she had of just a different way to try and connect with people. And then also same participant said that they were curious about how folks with very elderly parents who are still in their home balance the worry of making them sick with the desire to see them, to feed them emotionally. So basically the balance of, do I risk their health by visiting them for their mental health, but I'm also potentially risking their personal health or physical health.
So that's a great question. Actually, that's an excellent segue because that's basically our next question. So maybe we'll move to the next question. Was there anything else, Glenn, that you saw that you wanted to mention?
Thus far, that's it. But if other people have comments or questions, they can type them up and I'll pass them on to Holly and to the guests.
Okay, so the next question is, I'll read that before I look at the chats. So there are times, I think, when all of us feel pressure, even if it's covert pressure from family and friends, to go beyond what feels safe to each of us during COVID. So there are expectations socially, especially in situations where people are needing help, where they're asking for people to visit, and perhaps own bubble aren't really aware of the situation with COVID as much as if you're out in the world that you're aware of it. So there is pressure. How do you have suggestions for how best this can be handled? This is a good one. So Andrea, again, we'll start with you. We could go backwards, but we'll keep it the way it has been.
Okay, all right. Well, for me, the most important thing, and I would think that is something that I would recommend to others as well, is to find to be very clear on what feels safe to me and appropriate to me in a situation. So if I don't feel comfortable going somewhere for whatever reason, and feeling that people want to come and visit, or vice versa, I lay out, and I would recommend to everyone to do the same, to be clear on what they feel safe with and what is not safe, and just to make very clear what it is for me that needs to happen. And if I, for example, want to invite somebody to my house, which of course I don't do very often now, if at all, I would check with them about their comfort level as well. And then depending on that, the decision would be made whether it can happen at all, or whether it can only happen under certain circumstances, as we have had during the summer when we could be outside and so on. So that's it. I really feel it's good to be clear and not to feel guilty about having certain expectations and needs for safety, for masks and whatever else needs to happen. So that would be where I'm at. And
Okay, and what we can do.
Should I turn it over to Ben?
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we do it. I'm going to suggest that we each respond. It's suggested that we each respond to questions as we're inspired to do so. So how about we can do it just popcorn style in terms of responses, and we'll kind of move forward like that. So whoever would like to go next.
One thing that occurs to me, just following up from what Andrea said, is to be really clear about what we're comfortable with, so that we define it. I'm really seeing that we all have to interpret the rules in the way that is true for us, and that everybody has their own comfort level. What I see happens is we think we understand something, and then people get together and they're living it differently, or it looks like they're not living what they said they were going to do. But I think that comes from not being really clear in the first place. So that's what I would encourage, is asking what people are comfortable with, and then what they mean by that, and then what they mean by that, so that it's really clearly defined that we're talking the same language.
And I would echo that from Laurie, where what you said resonated a lot with one of my clients who is very paranoid about COVID. The rest of her family is not. And she went over to visit because, as they kind of encouraged her, please, please, please. So she went with a visor and a mask and everything, spent about 3 hours distanced, chatting, right? So kind of still distanced with everything on. And then they pulled out dinner and they're like, okay, come eat with us. And she was like, but like, I know, like, no, right? And they're like, well, we just made all this food, and it became this pressure, right? And to Laurie's point, she was very clear about wearing a mask and a visor when she went over, but she didn't kind of go through all the scenarios, right? So I'll be there at dinner time with the kids. I'll be there if the kids are climbing on me, if there's all these variables, right, of unknown. So yes, you can sit in the corner and look at the room, but the room is still moving around you. So I think when being clear about your boundaries, as everybody has said, is also visualizing what else may be there. What are some of these variables, right? So dinner, coffee, like don't serve me a drink. If I have everything on, don't serve me a drink, because that's a social norm, right? Like, what do you want to drink? What do you want to eat? Look, I have something on the table for us. Now I don't want to share a plate, right? I don't want to have a coffee and take my mask down to sip, right? There's those things that are unknowns that when you get there, you may not have necessarily thought of or discussed. So then you have that warfare, I guess, with the person of like, no, I made dinner, and you're kind of like, no, I can't. And then it's an awkward situation, right? So I think, to everybody's point, setting those boundaries first, but then also setting boundaries around possible things that might happen, right? If they have kids, if they have thinking about dinner or drinks, all of those pieces come into play.
I don't really have much to add. Those are all excellent points. The biggest thing for me is that everyone's um, reaction is different, and comfort level is different, and that it's just really important to understand that and take that into consideration. What I might think is safe and very low risk isn't what somebody else would necessarily think is the same, and and that that's been a practice for me. I will say in terms of that, there's the reaction often is a gut reaction or perceived risk as opposed to what the science is telling us or the numbers are telling us, etc. And that's just the way it is. Everybody feels differently about it, and so yeah, that's where the boundary setting is so important, and being okay with it. Other people are going to have different boundaries.
And I would add to that. I agree. It's important to set boundaries, and also to encourage people not to feel pressured to answer right away. If I'm invited to something and I'm not sure what the parameters are or what I'm actually being invited to, then I'll ask questions and get as much information as I need. Or try to get as much information as I can get, and then maybe sleep on it. I don't need to decide right away. It's so that way I'm not feeling pressured to do something I might not want to do. Or and one thing that helps me decide is if I do this, will I have any regrets? One of the questions that was asked about elderly parents, I have a mother who's in her mid 80s. I've seen her, she lives in Gatineau. I've seen her a couple of times since the pandemic. But what I do now is I call her every second day. I never used to do that. She's luckily, I feel quite fortunate that a phone call, and I know my siblings call her as well, a phone call works for her, or for some people that won't be enough. So that's a whole other situation. So there are opportunities to negotiate. There are opportunities to clarify. You know, you're inviting me over. What will that look like? What does social distancing look like for you? I've gone for walks with friends, thinking we're outside. It's summertime. And before I know it, they're 2 feet away from me. I'm not comfortable with that. So I need to be vigilant. I need to keep either reminding myself, okay, move further away because 2 feet isn't a safe distance. So it's about a lot of this has to do with confidence, with having clearly defined for myself what is safe and what isn't. And it's okay if my definition isn't the same as yours. And to say quite clearly, I'm not comfortable with this. This is, this doesn't feel good for me. And that's true in any situation. If it's COVID or if it's something else, this isn't working for me. So let's either renegotiate or we're done. We're not going to be walking anymore, or whatever it is. I guess that's all I want to add to that one.
Yeah, that's good. And it certainly happens quite often that you get to the scenario where we thought we understood what each other meant, but it's really quite different. And I think we've all lived that for sure. Glenn, I'll turn it over to see if you can bring up any questions or comments that people have had after this question.
Sure. A participant had asked, honestly, since March 2020, They've spent every day trying to remember on this day last year, to sort of jog a memory, to remember that they had a life. And but now with March 11th coming up, she won't have any of those memories for the last year because we've all been stuck inside. So they were wondering if one of the guests had any suggestions in regards to that.
Right.
I guess one of the things I'd ask is, do you have any photo albums? Do you have videos of holidays or, I don't know, graduation yearbooks, or find something with your recorded history?
Could you try again?
My watch just talked to me. Siri wants to play our game here. So yeah, photos might trigger some good memories.
That's a great idea. Any other suggestions?
Well, this may not be totally right for this answer, but for this question, but I think we are actually making a lot of memories. It's a very memorable time. And to kind of look at it from that point of view, even though it's very different, to perhaps have a little bit of curiosity for all the strange things that we do or are not allowed to do, that in my view adds up to memories, just very different than before.
Yeah, it's definitely, I was really shocked when I realized that it's been a year since somebody was first diagnosed with, in Canada, with COVID. Like some days it feels like 2 weeks ago, and then weeks go by. Time is very odd, I think, during COVID. Sometimes it just flies by. It's like we're at the end of the week already, but we were just at the last weekend. And then other days it's so long. So I think time has really shifted around on us during COVID. It's hard to keep track of things.
And I would agree with Andrea too, around that present thinking, right? That
yeah,
is a useful one.
yes.
Sorry to cut you off, Holly. I didn't realize I cut you off.
Great. No, not at
Go ahead.
all. So I was just wanting to do a time check for everybody, and it's just a little bit after 8. It's 8:06 actually. So we have about a half an hour left, a little less than half an hour. So one of the things that we talked about in coming up with these questions were some scenarios. And we may have already kind of gone over those in our discussion so far, but I'll move along to the next one, which is a scenario one. So this is something that a lot of people are living. I live alone. My house is boring. My work is boring. Food is boring. I can't go anywhere. I don't see friends anymore. It doesn't feel like life will change. Do you have any suggestions for my situation? I think we've come up with lots of suggestions that fit to this one, but do you have anything to add at this point?
A couple of things that I thought of in terms of that one was, if there is access to Zoom, like, is it possible to make a meal with someone, and over Zoom, or you could either make the same thing together, or each be making something different, and just that gives a conversation within it in itself, in terms of what made you choose that recipe, and what do you like about it, what memories do you have about it, and so it can be a whole part of the conversation. And first, well, this goes back to the last question in terms of your comfort level, but what about sharing meals at, we've done that make a big pot of chili and then put some in a container, and that goes to another person, and you could do that back and forth with some friends, so that then you're not having to make meals all the time. And like we talked about earlier, just is there anything, and I totally understand that when everything seems boring and mundane, that's the hardest time to be, reaching deep and pulling out to do new things. But is there, one small thing that people could think of that they're remotely interested in, and take a look at that, and try a new activity, or try it with someone else.
Great idea.
Yeah, building on that, first of all, I want to say I think boredom is a serious hazard of the pandemic. It really is, and one of the, for me, like I said, one of the antidotes is getting outside, and I think they can really take a push. And this is obviously if there aren't mobility issues, but just being outdoors or being in nature, I think is essential, because four walls are boring. Right? Are inherently boring. And so if that's possible, I think really shifting the environment, we don't realize how much stimulation there is in just being in a new environment. There are smells, there are things we're seeing, we feel different things, we experience people differently. And a lot of those things, this is the OT in me getting fired up, but there are a lot of things that are activated in us, all the times that we just go to the grocery store. And if we're not doing those things, for people who are having groceries delivered and rarely getting out, it's not just boring, it's not stimulating, and that's it's not healthy to the nervous system. So that healthy stimulation, I think, is really important. And what Chris was saying about learning something, I think, or doing something new, I think learning something is really important. Like that's a way of activating ourselves as well. And again, when we're feeling bored or a little depressive, it's hard to feel like learning. But that act of challenging ourselves, it does activate us. It does energize us, even if it's difficult. So, and there are, as was said before, that we're so fortunate with the internet now, but there are a zillion things to learn about right now, from craft to a language to an instrument to, and can be done very simply. You could learn drumming on the countertop, like it doesn't require an expense of equipment. There are a lot of things that can be done. So I think the idea of learning something new is an antidote to boredom. And make it easy, make it successful, because otherwise, we don't have a lot of resilience these days. The other thing that occurred to me is being of service. We don't realize what it is that we have to offer, and whether it's shoveling snow or reading a book to a young person or an older person who's visually impaired, or kind of digging deep and saying, what skills do I have and who needs them? And again, there's a sense of connection in that, and that's required, really. So that's enlivening. That's again an antidote to boredom. I think is that connection. Yeah.
I think tied to the question that was asked too, and then again tied to this one, I think around making memories, right? So you have a year in Canada looks very different in each season. So instead of kind of focusing on what did I do last year at this time, what did I do? Think about, so now in this situation, what do I want to do while we're still locked down in the winter? So we have 3 more months of winter, let's say. What do I want to do? What are some activities? And kind of schedule those in the next 3 months, right? So think of 6 of them, right? It doesn't need to be a lot, but those are some of the memories I want to make right now. And then also in the future. So when this is over next year, March, let's hope it's over. Next year, March, what are some of the things that I want to do? What are some new memories I want to make? And so you have something to look forward to. Because I think right now, people feel like they don't have anything to look forward to. I don't have a trip planned. I don't have a vacation planned. People aren't even taking their vacation for the most part right now because they're like, well, I work from home, so why take vacation? So I think it's having something to look forward to. So next year, what are all the things that when this is done that you want to look forward to? Have some plans around that. But in the meantime, now that we're in this situation, there's only so much we can control. We have all memories from the past, and that's what I was saying around Andrea's kind of present thinking. What are some of the memories that you want to make, right? And have that those behaviors scheduled throughout, whether it's like Laurie said, learning something new, or whether it's going outside and playing frisbee, or when it's warm, I'm going to do this, or when it's fall, these are the things I want to do. Even if we are still in this kind of holding stage, it may not be as severe. It might be, who knows? But what are some of the things I would like to do while I have this situation? And I think having some of those things to plan for, look forward to, can also help kind of keep you moving forward a bit, right?
Great.
Um, I
Go ahead.
that these are all wonderful suggestions, and I just wanted to speak to one other thing, and that is the comment there of I live alone. So living alone in this particular situation is really tough. It's much more difficult than for those of us who have a partner or are not living alone. So that needs kind of some special attention, and makes it harder to kind of get off the chair and do something and be motivated, or to think of anything that resembles even the slightest amount of hope that things can be different. So I think what that speaks to me is that isolation and loneliness, and what to do about that. So I think two things. One is, if there hopefully is someone who will listen a little bit to when one is in that kind of mode and mood, that would already really remove some of the sadness and the pressure of being faced with that situation and not really having any immediate fix. And the other one is, I think Ben was mentioning that earlier, this asking for help or to look around, because there are, of course, lots of people who live alone, and they pretty much all have days or times or even period feel like this. So to kind of think of who could I don't know, buddy up with, or who could I just even once in a while, or make a regular kind of date to speak with, so that some of that situation is at least a little bit lightened. And perhaps even then also, that was mentioned as well, to have that sense of that I'm helping somebody else as I am also being helped. So that is just the other thing that came to mind for me.
Great.
Quickly, I thank Andrea for picking up on that, because I am not living alone, and I don't know how people are doing it. It really needs to be acknowledged. And one point of connection, I think, is like joining a community to the extent that that's possible. I was thinking of First United as a welcoming community. There are Buddhist communities that are welcoming, and through that, because we can have an idea that we need to reach out, but we don't know who to reach to or how. So there are welcoming communities that where we can make contact and then have that buddy that you're talking about, that there could be a connection with, or at least once a week we know there's a meeting of people and that we're part of that, so that can be helpful, so that we're kind of pulled out of ourselves when we don't have it in ourselves to do it.
Great.
I just want to come back to that. Well, Sean mentioned it, and I think Laurie did too. Just taking yourself out of your environment and even, you know, when you're on your own, just to get in the car and go for a drive somewhere else, even if it's just another community, and seeing something different, or going to a park and walking in a different park. It just that being in a new environment. I mean, Lori and I try to do that fairly as often as we can, and like on a weekend, just go for a drive, or we're, you know, fortunate that know people in the country, and if that's a possibility, not even necessarily having a visit, but going and just walking on somebody else's uh, property. It just really can lighten things up, just to have a different environment to be in, that takes you out of your four walls.
Great. Yeah, this is something for sure that I've come up with. One of the things that I'm just going to mention quickly that I really have found helpful to get out of my own head, especially on those days when I can't get outside, is to do virtual tours. There are a number of wonderful virtual tours that are free, that travel people are putting on because we can't travel in person, or most people are not traveling in person, and we wouldn't recommend it, I'm sure. But they're wonderfully interesting because they're educational, so you do learn something new. And I find, to me, learning new things or having new things in my mind is very, very important during this time. Certainly connecting with others and actually seeing their faces is very helpful. But going on these wonderful virtual tours around the world are just so much fun. And I've visited those quite a bit. And that really helps my mind to relax and sort of get out of the spiral that can happen. And I agree totally with Lori, with what you were saying about, offering to do something for somebody else. That I know when I was most stressed at my job before I retired, there were really some very, very bad days. And what's going on, in government sometimes can be quite stressful. Same as pandemic. But on those days when I felt my worst, I thought that what I've got to do is do something for somebody else. I don't know what it is. Go and visit somebody, offer to do something, buy somebody a coffee, pay for somebody's Timmy behind me in my car, that kind of thing. Small things like that. And I've been noticing really with COVID that really paying attention to some of those little wee tiny things have been completely different. And, this is given the time to do that. But those have helped me in the past tremendously. I will say that. I was just noticing the time. We're kind of at 20 after 8, and we had one more scenario, which was around COVID. And I don't know that we really want to end on that one. So, because it's kind of one of those scenarios where people don't want to believe that there is such a thing as a pandemic on. But we'll skip that one because I think we've covered it pretty well. We know we're in COVID. Is there any kind of last words before we sign off for the evening, or any other questions that people have that are with us still on Zoom? Thank you for hanging in with us. But are there any questions or comments that people wanted to make to kind of sum up the evening?
Holly, I'll just pipe in just for a second to give
Thanks,
you
Glenn.
a couple of suggestions that people have brought up in the chat.
Great.
One person had suggested kind of a lot what we were talking about having a Zoom buddy or a walking buddy. Mentioned that back in the day, pen pals were a way to connect with people. And then certainly during the HIV/AIDS epidemic, we often had buddies just to hang out with, which was great when things around us were bad. And then another person suggested an idea that they did where they had a friend drop off some chips and salsa and some beer, which sounds like a really good friend to have. And anyone wants to bring, well, I don't drink beer, but you know, something alcoholic. I'll take Viv Clicquot. And they then had a Zoom chat and visited while sharing the snack, and it was just a way for them to feel connected. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think we all think about the people that we're not connected to and making a special effort to connect with them. I think, you know that people are kind of like, I haven't seen so-and-so on any of the things that I've been on for a while. So let's find out how they're doing. I think those are really helpful. I know I've done that a few times just to check in on people, literally. And as you say, with phoning your is it your mom or your dad every couple of days, Ben, like that's, these are kind of new ways that we can, keep doing after COVID is long over next year. Anything else people wanted to round up the evening with?
Yeah, I agree with you, Holly, around checking in with people. I think knowing also, like you said, if you haven't seen somebody on social media or on different things for a while, checking on them. I think also knowing to, I think it was Andrea's point, around those that live alone, right? So if you know, 7 of your friends live with people and 3 of them don't, maybe a little bit extra effort for those 3 that don't, right? And similarly, if there's been displacement because of COVID with work, or with somebody who owns a small business that can't function because of lockdowns, checking on those people, because they're affected even more harshly than some of us who can work from home, that can do different things. So I think kind of when you go through your kind of mental checklist of those that you're in contact with, seeing who might need a little bit of the extra support along the way, and check in, making a little bit of special effort with those people, because those are the ones that don't have the built-in support in the house, or may not have the distraction of work, or there might be now financial worries on top of it. So I think knowing who those people are might be useful when kind of prioritizing your list, and knowing those are the people you want to check on as well.
And the other side of that is the people who are having a hard time, who are living alone, who are finding it hard. Give yourself permission to say, this is friggin' hard. This is getting really long. Or I need an idea. Because as we said, it's right when we need it the most that it's hard to come up with the idea. So let yourself say, I can't figure out what to do today, and give me a list of ideas so that to generate some new energy.
So we have a suggestion also, write postcards, send people letters and things like that. Wouldn't it be nice to get a letter in the mail? Would be.
Yeah, we've been all the kids' pictures that are just, tons of scribbles because they're 3 and 2. We've been mailing it to friends, just like,
oh, wow.
here's some kids' scribbles in an envelope, right? And then they send a video for the kids saying, look, I got your letter, right? So even things like that, those little kind of engagement is something physical.
Yeah. I will say just before, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think I totally believe too that anything that these days we do for each other, and we would do well in doing the same if we do it for ourselves, is extra special. It has a lot of meaning because the times are so hard. So that again mix that I think I started off with, which I do for myself. On the one hand, to give myself permission to rant and rave about, complain a lot about what I have to live with right now, but at the same time to also really look at the positive and whatever that might be, to give myself permission to have that. And for everybody to do the same would be, as much as possible, really good, whatever exactly that translates to.
Great. I was just going to mention the reason that I got started doing hosting Zoom chats with friends and family is because my 89-year-old mother-in-law FaceTimed me one day, and right out of the blue. And I had not taught her how to do that. She knew how to do that herself. And she just thought, I'm going to check in with all my family. And so she did that. And so one of the things that I'm realizing too, as we go through COVID, is the stigma of, technology and older people don't go together. But indeed, we found through OSPN and through the virtual programming and all the different things we've been doing, that people are very, very good at adapting and pivoting towards something new. I think it's been an absolutely a wonderful surprise in a way. And at 89, she was the one that stimulated me to get started learning how to do Zoom, for example. So I think we can pick up these inspirations from all kinds of different places. And I'm just going to give you a chance, panel. You've been wonderful. Thank you so much. Just to say your final goodbyes, and we'll wrap up for the evening. So whoever, we're going to do it popcorn style. So you can say your goodbyes.
I'll start by saying thank you, Holly and Glenn and Sean and whoever was involved in getting it going. By being asked the questions, it got me thinking about it for myself, and I need plenty of ideas also. So thanks for this, and let's keep connecting.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also thank Holly and everybody who was involved in putting this together, and I was very pleased to be in the company of all of you during this time. So thank you, and keep well.
Yes, similarly, I'll echo those sentiments. It's been nice to work with everybody, so thanks for including me. This is my first time kind of meeting most of you and being part of this group itself. So I appreciate you including me and letting me speak today. And sorry, Holly, again for cutting you off.
Hey.
And the next time I won't do it.
Go for it.
No, I really appreciate all of the coordinating efforts it took to get this together and get the questions together. They're, I think, right to the point and very, very specific to what we're going through right now. So I appreciate all the efforts.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank the organizers as well, and OSPN for all of the amazing work that you're doing. Talk about pivoting. And to the participants for their for hanging out with us for an hour and a half and contributing and yeah, spending time with us.
Yeah, that's it. So thank you all very much again. It's really been an honor to be part of this, and it was very loosely put together, and you just all just stood up to the plate, and thank you so much for doing that. We're thinking that it might be good to do this again in a bit of time. This is the end of January, believe it or not. And the winter's going to go on for some time. It's going to get, the days are getting longer. We can feel that, there is a bit of, there's relief coming in different ways, but I think it's still useful to get together. We'll, if people wanted to comment on the format, on how this is working for them, that would be really helpful back to OSPN. So you can write emails to the OSPN programming at, Glenn, you'll have to tell me what the email is, but you could certainly, you got the invitation, you can, so you can send an email back to us to say, okay, this is what I'm going to suggest for next time, because I do think there's an opportunity for us to keep connecting like this and finding different ways of having ideas brought to help it, to inspire us every day. I think we're getting through this together. We're a big community. We're very diverse. There will be lots of different programming going on through OSPN, but this idea of, how are we getting through day to day is also something that we really want to help ourselves with and other people. So here we are, ospn.programming@gmail.com. Thanks, Glenn. So Glenn, do you have any final thoughts yourself before we end the evening?
Sure. There's a few other comments that came up while everyone was chatting. Another idea, another suggestion was to play games virtually. I think it was brought up before, but just another way to have a connection. You mentioned writing letters, postcards, that people love getting personal mail instead of bills all the time. Uh, and some comments, basically the therapists are excellent, so well prepared, so thank you to all of them. And I thank everyone again for the special guests for participating, that it was very helpful. And then another person says, thank you so much. Some wonderful, diverse suggestions. Stay safe, learn, give, and exercise is my motto, and to be kind to yourself and to others. And yeah, a couple comments saying, let's do this again. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do that.
Okay, I wanted to just end by just saying one wonderful thing that's happening is that we have a new program coordinator working on Ottawa Senior Pride Network membership or group, and they are working at the Good Companions, and they just started this week. Her name is Amanda Kristalovich, and we welcome Amanda. You'll be meeting her, I'm sure, in some form or another going forward. But we're going to have a lot of help, developing our programming and keeping in touch with people and reaching out to people that we want to make sure that are in contact with folks. So we'll keep working on this and building our foundation even wider. So we're very happy that this is happening, and we have City of Ottawa funding and the Good Companions and Centertown Community Health Center, fantastic collaborators. We have tremendous allies in this community, I will say, as well as a very wonderful, diverse community. So we're going to do our best to keep seniors on the map in Ottawa and keep at the work. So thank you again for a lovely evening. You've inspired me. I'm going to grow some grass. Well, okay, green grass. Thank you all so much. We'll wrap it up for tonight. Thank you so much, Glenn. You've been wonderful. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And yeah, of course, OSPN, we're continuing to do a lot of virtual events. So just to mention that we have our website, ospn-rfao.ca, where you can see all of our weekly events. Tomorrow morning, for example, we have a meditation at 10 a.m. Yeah, so there's lots of ways that we're trying to reach out to our members to keep people occupied. It's not easy, particularly in winter. So yeah, and if of course, if anyone has any suggestions for future activities, you can email me at the email that I put in the chat, ospn.programming@gmail.com. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.